Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. And, it's a pretty good arm there, mate. You're trying to upstage me a bit. I saw it pop. Hey, there it is, eh?
That's a good one right there.
Mate, we need to get you on the fix. That's how we stuck at that, eh? You still got it. For an older guy, what about that?
Oh.
Noticed as well, Ron, you're drinking water there, yeah?
Yeah. Yep. Nope, you gotta drink your water.
Choice of champions, Ron Bath. Choice of champions. Welcome back to the show, mates.
Yep.
Part number 2. And we were just saying before we went here that we're getting pretty damn good at this, Ron. We had a few teething troubles early on, but we're past that.
Yeah, we're on a run right now, so let's keep it up.
And a little bit of a change of location there, mate. It looks like you've
yeah. Yeah, hopefully this comes through a little bit clearer than where I was last time.
We got some good response. A lot of people like that show, mate. And obviously we're in a situation where we can warm it up a bit now.
We'll see what I can come up with.
I think I set you a challenge, didn't I? The last time we were on here, it was a little bit around. We were just getting into some of the sort of epic matches. Now, I wanted to focus this episode a little bit on that, on some of the matches, but also it's time that we really started getting a little bit closer to the current and starting to look at some of your career in the World Armwrestling League, I think. But as a sort of starter for 10, I wanted to just go back to the Arm Wars Super Series side of things, really. And we got a question on your match about your match with Yoshi Kanai. And one of the guys put on there that I shouldn't have mentioned that because they felt you would be embarrassed that you drew 3-3 with Yoshi Kanai because Yoshi wasn't such a big guy. And I wanted to just mention that to yourself and see what your thoughts. Do you get any embarrassment that you drew 3-3 with Yoshi, mate?
I don't take no embarrassment from pulling anybody. And I don't want to discredit Yoshi, but I told you the way I train is so up and down. I never know where I'm at. And at that time I pulled Yoshi, I still was practicing pretty much by myself. And what was I, mid-40s already? Shit, I was an old fart already. And I already knew stories about Yoshi if you didn't beat him right away. And Yoshi likes to come in with that press. So I wanted to do better. But after round 3, when I popped my elbow, I was lucky I got out of there with a 3-3.
Yeah. And Yoshi also, the peak of his career, Yoshi was no bum.
No, Yoshi gave a lot of people a lot of fights.
Yeah. He was extraordinarily strong, and his will to win was as high as anybody I've ever seen. Very much like yourself, once he was in that battle, you know, it's like the old statement, like the old saying goes, Ron, nobody from there.
No.
Hey?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I loved it. But I hate that position. But I'll be honest with you, as far as that match with Yoshi goes, if it would have been swapped the day after Michael Todd blew his elbow, I probably would have walked. Because, like I said, round 3, I took him, I got him over, and all of a sudden we came back up to the middle, I think, and I went to hit, and I felt like 3 pops in here.
Yeah.
And that's when all of a sudden you see I go fast, and I was hesitant for a while, and then I thought, let's just give her another try, and then I managed to pull him out, and it didn't bother me. But then I watched Michael Todd tear his up the next day, and I was like, oh, yeah. But 3-3 with Yoshi is not a bad thing, and I'm not embarrassed. I mean, Yoshi's a hell of a warrior.
Yeah, rock strong. I've always had Yoshi. I rate Yoshi very, very highly. When Yoshi was at his best, he was a handful. I saw him hit the hook with Farid Usmanov, as was then Feritos Manley of today, out in Japan 05. And we all know how strong Farid was then in the hook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Evidenced by his matches with John Brzezinski and so on and so on. They hit the hook out there, and Farid went to hit Yoshi hard, and that arm did not move.
Yeah.
Did not move. So, the match, I believe, ended on fouls. If we had Engin Terzi on here, he'd be able to tell us all about it and exactly what minute. But, solid puller, mate, and a real battle. And as I said, most entertaining match I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Absolute quality.
I mean, that's what it's about. You want good matchups, and me and Yoshi were a good matchup, especially at that time.
So, mate, let's talk about good matchups, Ron Bath, because you've been a few.
I've been in a lot. You told me to look at the book. I started looking at an album of pictures. I went, holy, forget this. I'll just let Neil bring up some matches, and people bring up matches.
So, mate, the Devon Larratt thing. I want to focus in on yourself and Devon have some history.
Yep. Yeah.
The first one we spoke about or touched on at the end of the last episode, where Ashley filmed it, made like quite a beautiful piece out of that, quite a cinematic piece, really artistic, wasn't it? And
yes.
Is that available anywhere? Can people see that, Ron? Do you know?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, it's on. You can pull it up.
It's online, is it? So you can find that.
Yep. I mean, look at how fast the match with me and Taurus come up the next day. It's all on there. You just got to dig.
Yeah, you got to know where it is.
Time and wherewithal of a computer to find stuff. So, yeah.
You know what I'd love to see? Remember we were talking about yourself and John at the Tony Celeste thing, the power lock?
Yeah.
I would like to got that.
It's out there. It's out there. I saw it a while back ago, but I don't have the time or the patience to be looking for it.
To be trolling through.
I'm sure if we mentioned it, there's a good chance it's going to show up here someday.
Yeah, anybody got that out there? If you've got the match at the Power Lock in Vegas with Tony Celeste gig between Ron and John Brzenk, please pop that up there because that was good stuff. Other great matches, mate. What are the ones that stand out in your mind and why?
Well, that would be a big one. And I was thinking of the matches you're talking about. You know, I've been in so many, it's hard for me to come back and just think of many. When people bring them up, then I can bring them up. I mean, me and Michael Todd at the UAL, that was a flipping war. And the issue with me and John out there in Vegas, the drama that led up to that match. Oh, golly. Taurus, I'm sure.
Do you have matches that are sort of, you put more of a premium on? And if so, is it because of the style of match or do you attach it to who you beat or the gravitas of the event that you won in? What sort of
most of them are who I beat. You know, anytime you get a win against Brzenk, it's big. You know, the win against Taurus, that was sort of big because Taurus's name was up there with the top roll. When I beat Johnny Walker, of course. You know, I got some wins with Richard Lupke's. One I even forgot about. I mean, at the Ruler of the Nation, it come up. That's why I say I've been in so many matches. I think I forgot about more matches than I can remember. So, speaking of Richard Lupke's, you know, you told me who draws my attention, and I told you Johnny Walker I wanted to emulate. Yeah. Well, guess who introduced me to these pants?
Yes, mate. Hey, mate, I'll tell you what. That's a pair of classic pants right there.
I wore those at tournaments, the late 80s, 90s. First day Karen Bean saw me at a tournament with it, she about fell out of her chair. And I was told by a certain one that I do not wear those at a tournament or she will walk.
Mate, that is a cracking pair of pants. And a load of stuff's just resurfaced with Richard in the old gym wear stuff. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
A long pair of gear. Just popping up now. Paul Goodridge, saw him with John. Got that yellow t-shirt on him. The old.
Richard knew how to dress. I mean, he dressed the part.
MC Hammer. And he brought that hammer with him, didn't he? Jesus.
Yeah, for sure. But, oh man, different wars. Tell me which ones you want to see.
Well,
me and Marcio have had multiple wars. I mean, back and forth, but never super match type series, but just tournaments. So
I wonder whether it's because when you get into one of these, I'm going to describe it as a series of matches because I'm going to Marcio you've just named as one of those guys, right? I'm going to name two more straight off the bat who you've had these sort of running battles with where they get a win, you get a win, they get a win, and you cause problems for them. Devon Larratt, one that you've gone back and forth with in some screaming death wars. What about Matt Mask?
Me and Matt I've beaten all but I think Matt beat me once, and I think he got gifted at the wall by when I pulled Devon right before Matt, I pulled some ribs out. And when I hit Devon, got Devon over, and all of a sudden when I came back up and Devon got me back up, all of a sudden I lost all wind on my one side. And when I thought I could block it out when I hit Matt, and I hit, and I went, that ain't going to work. But as far as that, there again, I've beaten Matt almost all the times.
Yep.
But not one of the matches with Matt were ever easy.
No.
It was, the wall at down in Louisiana. Man, I got Matt over, and I'm sitting here for like ever because Matt was finally starting to put some back pressure on and learn. And but yeah, Matt, you had to be ready because you have to be ready to catch Matt because he's as fast as what I had to pull with David Randall. And if Matt Mask would get some power, Matt's my boy. I like him. Mm-hmm.
There's very few men that you've got a losing record against when you think about it. Very few. Yeah. You could probably, is it fair to say that you can probably count on one hand the guys in the sport in the last sort of 15, 20 years who've got a winning record on you?
John Brzenk. Who else? Travis left-handed. We have never pulled enough to have too many. Johnny Walker, of course, but I beat Johnny like 7 times, and then he beat me once and retired.
Mm-hmm.
Who would? A lot of us possibly, like me and Marcio, I really don't know what the count is because I don't keep track of too many scores. So me and Marcio might be fairly close to 50-50.
Yeah.
I'll brag about one. Michael Todd does not have a winning record on me. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, Mike. Mike wants a super match or a match with me now because, he'd probably whoop my ass right now, so he ain't going to get it.
Yeah, you know he's watching this.
Oh, yeah. No, Mike's good, but his days are over. I don't have to go pull no super heavyweights. But,
so what about, let's have a look at some of the World Armwrestling League moments for you. Because you've sort of always been on the fringe there or thereabouts. You've been in that sort of upper echelon of the World Armwrestling League. Never got the hammer, but came very close. What is your best finish in the World Armwrestling League, mate?
The best one was probably that year I took second when I should have beat Devin. A few times pulling Devin and coming through. What was that? 3 years ago? 4 years ago?
I was going to say, was that 16, 15?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The World Armwrestling League has always been fairly good. I just never could quite reach that pinnacle of the top. Mainly because I always had to pull against John or Devin, and they both just had, where I work power, I think I got to beat everybody with power. Those guys always knew how to beat me with their little angles and stuff like that. Even John has made comments that he just knew where to put me in. If he could get me just right, he knew he could come through without putting too much power on him. So what would you like to know about Wall?
I want to know your thoughts, feelings on the World Armwrestling League events, where they sit in because a lot of people would say that the classic old-time events, the things like the Yukon Jack, which you're obviously very familiar with, your experience at the World Arm Wrestling Federation Championships, where you've done exceptionally well, other major events that have come, Ultimate Las Vegas, one that we didn't mention, where you had some great wins as well. What about the Mohegan Sun?
Mohegan Sun was definitely probably one of my better tournaments. Mm-hmm. See, I can remember these because I think what helped me in the Mohegan Sun was, one, I was training for a super match with Dave Randall to go against Jerry Caderet. And Jerry, he's got that unique style. Jerry just wants to crush in on it. So me and Dave Randall worked for about 4 months, once a week, on just trying to beat Jerry's style. Mm-hmm. And then some stuff happened. That match got canceled, and we went up to the ruler of the nation.
Yep.
Well, in the class, it was Jerry, John, Marcio. I mean, it was deep, and all 4 of us were in the finals. And I think what helped me with that class is I pulled Jerry before the other ones. Yep. So when I got the win on Jerry, because everything worked out, I was fresh. I knew where to try to set him up, and I knew I had to go inside fresh, and it all worked perfect. Well, getting that win with Jerry set my motivation way up. It put my confidence to a level where I think if I would have pulled John or even Marcio, I could have possibly. So in tournaments like that, it does play out on who you pull and where. that can possibly help you come out with the victory, because then I ended up coming through and winning it. And it was probably one of my bigger wins of my career.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to sort of draw upon things like that kind of historic tournament, let's say. Okay. So UConn would be one. And any you want to throw in here, throw them in. The main event. Did you pull main events in Pocatello?
Yeah, I pulled the main event. That was a long time ago.
Like 95 or something. I don't know, around then.
Long time for an old man.
Yeah.
The funniest part about Pocatello was there was this big 7'4" left-hander.
Paolo. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I got a story about him, but I had to pull him left-handed. And I managed to stretch him out and got the win. And I gave the videotapes away, so I have no video of that match anymore. But the funniest part about that tournament is Paulo's just a huge man. And Denise Waddles comes up, and, I'm not paying attention to names or people or anything.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Hey, Ron, you leave for the airport at like 4 a.m, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "You got your own car?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Can you give Paulo and his partner a ride back?" And I'm like, "Who's Paulo?" And she points, and I went, "Oh, man, Denise, I got a little bitty compact car." So we go through it and go with Paulo. He's like, "Good." This guy gets in this car in the morning, all right, where we hold a cup of coffee like this. He holds a cup of coffee like this. He gets in this car. His buddy gets in the back. He gets in this car, and he's all crunched up like this. And as soon as I say, "Paulo, you okay?" he pops the seat back and lays straight back. And he rides I think it was like a 3-hour drive, and we needed gas. And it's like 4:35 in the morning. We're driving, and all of a sudden I see sign for gas off. So we get off, and it's one of these where the gas station's like a mile off to west or east. So we get out, and we got lost because, we didn't have GPS or cell phones as much. And we see this person getting out of a car to go into their business. And it happened to be on the passenger side. So you got this little bitty car, and we rolled down the window, and Paulo's big head in the window. It had to have looked like Lurch. And this tiny little person's going up these steps. "Hey, do you know what a gas station is?" I think they pointed as fast as they could run up those steps.
And he was like way over 7 foot when he's like 7'2" or 7'4".
He was
Jesus
huge.
Christ.
Huge, man.
Yeah. He went on to Pride Fighting Championships, didn't he? Went over to fight in the Pride. Got his hair long. Giant Silver, it's called.
Yeah.
Massive guy. I remember his matches there with Robert Redden. Do you remember Robert Redden?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he had some wars there with Robert Redden as well over at Pocatello. Mm-hmm. But looking at those events, the historic events through the history of arm wrestling, where do you believe that the big events for the World Arm Wrestling League ranked? Do you think they were as harder? Should be spoken about in the same breath?
Oh, definitely. The tournament themselves were just as big and just as tough because everybody, when WAL was first starting out and they were doing the qualifiers and then the tournaments, you had everybody wanting to go qualify. So you broke it down to the cream of the crop. Basically it was almost getting to the point of looking like over the top type stuff, because everybody was talking about going to WAL. And when you did get to the finals, it was the cream of the crop for here, and you even had some from overseas coming over.
Yeah.
And so it was a big tournament those first years. And then, with everything going on, they changed their format to more super matches. And it's still, to me, WAL has a great place in the sport right now.
In terms of the sort of depth of talent that you saw and do see, saw at the World Arm Wrestling League main draw events, do you think that they were comparative in the heavyweight with such as the W.A.F? Do you think they're comparable level?
The thing is, when you talk about the depth, I think arm wrestling's changed to a point. In W.A.F. back in those, back a few years back before WAL, before PAL, you only had W.A.F. to prove yourself, to see where you stood on the world level. And so you had the elites and the best of every country at WAL. Now, sadly, as much as I like WAL and PAL, we got a lot of our biggest names only going to those money tournaments. You know, you sign a contract with Wall, and they don't want to mess up what they have going with Wall or with Pal to show up at W.A.F.
Yeah.
I like the W.A.F. I like tournament format. I like super matches, but where Wall, you know, they go into an angle where they want to see some attitude and tension. I like more. I'm old school. I like the tournament format a little bit more, and that's why I probably won't be doing any Wall, but I will support Wall at the fullest. And I'll promote some Pal too, but I like the tournament format, and I want to go do another WAF. So, but talent-wise, I think WAF was always a little bit deeper, because the other thing about WAF is you have a tournament format where you can't prep for one person or two people.
Sure.
You better be multi-talented and be able to change in a hurry. And, you don't get 3 months to prep for Devin Lorette. You don't even know if you'll pull him at WAF.
Yeah.
So.
And I think the other thing there is there's so many guys that sort of fly under that popularity radar.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your names that you see at these events, but there's a crop of lads in a lot of the Eastern European countries, even some of the Western European countries, and Brazil have brought some good guys and so on. Japan have brought some good guys. Yoshi, case in point. But there's a level of talent there that's sort of below that popularity radar. You may not know who they are, but they show up there and, you know, all of a sudden you're in some screaming wars with people you've never seen, you weren't aware of. Somebody goes in there and on paper they're an enormous favourite, and in round 2 they hit somebody from some obscure area of, you know, Tajikistan or something, who's an absolute monster. And there seems to be like a propensity for these guys to show up in the W.A.F, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, case in point, look at my match with Brez 3 weeks ago.
No,
you know, I knew he was a beast. I didn't know he pulled. See, this is how they fly under the radar, is the fact I didn't really know him until a couple of years ago. I didn't know he was pulling as long until you told me he was at WAF years ago. He's beyond his prime. Because what I felt left-handed, he's got a lot of prime left.
He's a beast, mate. Brez was lighter. Wasn't as big as he is now, but in terms of, you know, who knows whether his best years are done, but his sort of prime years where he was really right there and was a dominant force, a favourite going into the Worlds, you know. If you spoke to Vazigan, he'd tell you all about it, mate.
Oh, yeah. Well, Vazigan has his own right to fame. He's been around a while. But, you know, it goes back to the point of there's a lot of arm wrestlers out there because they don't make the social media as much. Mm-hmm. Totally. You don't see them. You don't realize they're there. You see these same 5 or 6 people, and you think that's arm wrestling, and those are the elites. They're great arm wrestlers. They're there. But arm wrestling's a whole lot deeper with talent than what Wall or Pal could ever show.
Sure. Yeah, and you've seen... Here's one for you then, Ron. In your 40-plus years of arm wrestling, what would you say... Well, let's layer this into 2 areas. What would you say is the hardest promotion stroke series of events that you have ever seen in the history of arm wrestling? And what, second part of the same question, what single event would you say represents the hardest tournament you have ever competed in? The most difficult tournament. So two questions.
Yeah.
Because I've heard people say, okay, they go, right, you know, back in the day there was the Golden Bear. And if you encapsulate the Gold Bear, that was the hardest set of tournaments ever. Another set of guys will say, no. The Yukon Jack tournaments, that Yukon Jack between, you know, early 90s, mid 90s, that series of events were the hardest tournaments you've ever seen. Then the next guy, no, it's W.A.F. in this period. You know, everybody's got their opinion. You've been to a lot of these shows. You've been involved with a lot of these shows. What's your take?
Yukon Jack, I believe, was in the States. It was the deep. It was at that time was the deepest place. Everybody who was somebody was there. the one that impressed me the most, and I only been there once, was Lottie. To me, that's deep. And that's another one of these that, yeah, you get big names there, but you also get a whole lot of these guys that show up that nobody's ever heard of, and that sort of messes up the, if you get the wrong person, wrong time. Zlotty finds them deep, and Zlotty finds them from places, like you said, countries we've never even heard of, and they show up. Zlotty, when I went over there, I did fairly well, but honestly, that was deep and a very good exposed for overseas. I never went to the Golden Bear, but I have heard stories through Bob Brown and John Brezink about how that was at the time. If you had to prove yourself, you needed to go to the Golden Bear. But I think every generation, maybe every 5 to 8 years, there's a new series of big tournaments you got to get ready for. When I first started, of course, it was over the top. When I first moved to Georgia, everybody was going over the top. And that turned out to be the big and the cream of the crop for it. The only thing is it took 24 hours to run the damn tournament.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But Yukon Jack was immense. Wall in its own right, when it was running the tournament format for tournaments, was immense. Zlotty, they all have a little different scenario of people and chemistry, but I think if you're in the States and you want to prove yourself, you got to go to Zlotty. Or in a day you would have to go to Golden Bear. That way you get this challenge to people in the other world. We know the people in the States here because it's easy to fly from here to Cali or, to back to Wisconsin or wherever. But you got to really plan and train to go to Zlotty, and there you're getting guys who are basically driving. For the Europeans to prove themselves, they got to try to find their way into the WAL right now because we don't have we don't have basically a tournament format for the masses, or everybody's got to go to W.A.F. Because unfortunately, arm wrestling doesn't make no great money. It's not the greatest sport to get sponsors. I mean, we got a few guys that do fairly well with sponsors, but you really got to push it. And so when you start putting family life in and your work life in with arm wrestling, you can't travel all over the world to prove yourself. Just a few, so that's why we get to know a few. So to me, it depends what country you're from, and you got to fly to that other country. And if you're winning locally, you got to go out and challenge yourself to the next area. You got to go to their stomping grounds and see if you can beat them there.
And the second part of the question, mate, in terms of is it possible to encapsulate a single most difficult tournament that you believe you've ever entered? Is that something you think you could do or not?
Mohegan Sun and I won it.
Nice work, mate.
And Travis's tournament where I won it too. The most single toughest tournament series I ever went to. God. Man, I think they're all tough. They're all right there. I think prepping for W.A.F. Because you're planning to go. And for me personally, it was when I went to London, to England, and I tried to do the 4 classes.
Yeah,
that was probably the most focused I ever was for a tournament because I had to. For me personally, when I went to that Worlds, I had to train. I had to understand that I had to be mentally ready. I had to be more than just physical because it's basically in 4 days you're pulling 3 days.
Yeah. And
man, you got to make sure you have everything going for you and get your rest, get your hydration and everything. And we saw by day 4, man, I was close, even though, and that's where if I would have been a little more trained as far as slipping and letting go and going to the straps, I really believe possibly after talking to a few others, I could have possibly came out with 4 of them. My hand got cooked. And then your attitude goes out the window.
And at that time, that was the biggest arm wrestling competition in the history of the sport. And I think it's still the 3rd or 4th largest arm wrestling competition of all time now. It's an absolute massive event, over 1,900 athletes, huge show. Yeah. So, it was ridiculous, running till late in the evenings every evening, starting early doors.
You didn't do my rest any favors. No. You had to be back early the next day. So
yeah, brutal times.
Honestly, that might be the most famed one I'm glad I went to. There's some that come up, but when somebody asked me what I did, it was winning 3 worlds at that one. And now when you bring up that, it does, because it never even dawned on me that was the biggest WAF at the time, which, and there was some massive numbers, 20 to 40 people in every flipping weight class.
Yeah.
And it was huge.
And monsters. You had some seriously big name pullers there from all over the world, some absolute monsters. Must have been a really proud moment for you. It certainly, it was quite watching Gary Roberts. For those of you out there who haven't seen Gary Roberts stuff on TV, resurgent Gary Roberts has just come back and kick-started TV, and he captured so much of your career. And it's like, you could see Ron Bath's evolution through TV, can't you? You really can. There's some, I mean, did he get Mohegan Sun? Has Gary got that?
Mohegan Sun's up. It might have been Gary, because it was during his time. He might be the one that put it up. Mm-hmm.
Gary Roberts, call to action, son.
No, I'm glad to see Gary bring it up, because like we talked last time, everybody, the young guys up today, they see what's going on now. They know Devin, they know Mike, but it's nice to see these older ones come up, and you get to look back at how the sport really evolved into what it is. And if you watch it close, you'll see a lot of style differences from, say, the 70s, 80s into the 90s, and then on. Those, if you watch a video of the 70s, everybody's right here. And then all of a sudden you start seeing top rules come in. And then all of a sudden you start seeing slips add. You start seeing a lot of this. And then sadly, somebody got this King's move going, and we got to get rid of that one. But
not even a thing.
But if you watch a lot of these older ones in today, it's fun to watch the evolution of the sport and see where the greats were and who they were, and follow it. So I'm glad Gary's posting a lot of that stuff. Yeah,
it's great. Great that's getting out there, and it's getting views. People are watching that, and they can see. It's like you say. I think it's really, really good for people to sort of hear from the likes of yourself, Richard Lutkeys. I'd love to get Johnny Walker on here, and others. There's so many guys that need to have that little bit of airtime. We had Cobra Rhodes on here, and we've still got to finish his series. The other guy that I'm very keen to finish the series is Engin Terzi. I mean, obviously, you're very familiar with Engin. What a monster.
I got a story about Engin. I think we were heading up to Pocatello.
Yeah.
Pocatello to that tournament. And I'd never met Engin in my life. All right. Engin knew more about Ron Bath than Ron Bath knew about me. He's in the back seat. I think Denise Waddles might have been driving. And I'm up front, and all of a sudden, Engin's bringing up, Ron, do you remember this tournament? You pulled such and such, and you had this style. I'm like, damn, Engin, just tell the story, because hell, you watch, that guy's got his memory is so flippin'. I would love to have half his memory.
Yeah. He is the most obsessed arm wrestler I've ever met.
Yep. Yeah, very much.
He absolutely, Engin, it's in his DNA. It's just in him. It's the fibre of his very being. Yep. God bless him for that. And what a savage. I love Engin. He's iron.
Understands that sport so well.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. One of the true all-time greats. Magnificent arm wrestler. That's something we can get into, mate. Obviously, there's a lot of, you spent your life in the heavier weight categories, as you say. You were sort of always around the 220 mark, even when you were a younger man. How much sort of time and emphasis have you given the lightweights? Do you pay a lot of attention to the lightweight classes, mate?
Sadly, no. If I know somebody personally in them, I do. But the funny part was, there again, I can't remember the name. It might have been a ruler of the nation. They were podcasting it, or I had it on radio or something. And they asked me and John. John happened to be up in the booth, and I was over there like, Ron, get up here and comment. I'm like, all right. So me and John are in the booth commentating, and it's the lightweight. And John goes, Ron, do you know these guys? I'm like, no. He goes, guys, you got the wrong two up here. We don't pay attention to these guys. We pay attention to our class, not the lightweight. So it's, unless you got somebody in your club or somebody that actually is pulling in those classes, it's hard. There's so many in your own class. You focus on your own class most of the time. I know a few of the keys in the lighter weights, but not really. Well, it's sort of, we can go with the women. I didn't know anything about the women's class until just recently. Now I can tell you probably more about the women's class.
Mate, I was going to say, talk about living dangerous. You don't mind a bit of risk, do you?
Honestly, I know probably more styles about some of the women than I knew most of the lightweight men. Sorry, guys.
Let's talk about the girls, okay?
Come
on now. Hey, and not that biased rubbish. Let's talk about the girls. Who are the girls that impress you the most? Tell me let's hear Ron Bath's top 5 female arm wrestlers of all time.
I'll get in trouble if I don't put number 1 as Angie Rose.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna.
Number 1,
Rose, obviously, we'll put her on the pedestal.
No weight class. Just at top.
Yeah, just the ones you know, for whatever reason, doesn't it have to be a success?
Gabby impresses me so dang much. I mean, we were down in Florida 2 years ago, and we were horsing around at the end, and I let Gabby get me over to that side of the table, and I want to see if I could, and I started trying to pull it. I'll be honest, there's very few guys under her weight class that are going to beat Gabby. Mm-hmm. All right. And then we go up to Sarah Bachman, who I would love to see that rematch, because Sarah seems very focused on what she's doing now. She's training hard, and she's got a lot going for her. You know, I don't see a whole lot of Gabby anymore because she's not on social media as much. And that one might be interesting to watch now because, well, Gabby got Sarah hooked in and made it easy. And I don't know if it'd be that easy again for Gabby, but again, I don't see Gabby. Those right now are the women I know are probably 1 and 2. I don't know a whole lot, you know. When you get lighter, you got Tatiana. Of course, you got Angie Rose, who's proven herself with the W.A.F, undefeated.
Mm-hmm. Nice little plug. I like that one.
Yeah.
Like work.
And, you know, well, Michelle Dugan would have to be up there, but there again, I don't know too many of the women from overseas. I know Angie, when she went over to Worlds, she said there's some
I'll throw some names at you, and you tell me if if Ron Bath's a fan. This will cheer him up. Okay, Fia Reisek, Sweden.
Yeah. Beast. Well, all right, let's go there. I forgot all about that little country of Sweden. If you're from that country, you're automatically
automatically iron.
You're inbred as being an awesome arm wrestler.
Yeah, they got some. I mean, particularly the chicas, the girls of Sweden, and wow. I mean, Marlin, what a debut from Marlin in the WL. My word.
You're back. Yeah.
You know, I'm my favourite Marlin. Love Marlin. Absolutely awesome. So many girls from that part of the world that are so impressive. Too many to talk about. If we look at Russia, the same situation. You know, that match I couldn't wait for. Marlin and Irina Gladkaya. That was going to be mate. That was
I've seen her. Yeah.
I was so excited to see that. I really was. And while we're on arenas, are you familiar with Makieva?
No. When you get into the Russian women, I don't know enough about them.
Wait, is Angie there? Is she in the house? Is Angie there?
No.
Mate, you need to be very thankful of that. Because if I start nailing these and you're like, oh, no, really, she will kick your head in, dude.
Probably, what was her name again?
Makieva. Irina Makieva. She's the John Brzenk. Literally the John Brzenk of female. Oh, unbelievable.
I think I've seen her. But yeah. No, I'm not worried about
girl. Speaks great English as well.
Does she?
Oh yeah, and she's just iron. I mean, you know, I'm not sure I've ever seen her really lose. Unless she's injured or something, you know. There's another lady called Egla Vepkite from Lithuania. Big girl, powerful girl, you know. Just a very big frame. Super, super, super strong lady. Awesome.
Their big problem is there's not enough depth and there's not enough women in it. So I think Bob Brown did a great job last year at his little tournament. He got round robin for the girls. And I think if the women would go into round robin type things, like have a 4-person round robin and invite some of the better women, it gets more to younger women maybe to show up. But I think like the names you mentioned, instead of just like the super match series with Wall with one, you know, if Wall even had a 4, try to get a few more of these girls involved. The female class would maybe grow. But that's just it. It's like, you know, you only got like 4 or 5 here in the States, 4 or 5 in Canada. You know, I think overseas, Russia and Sweden, you know, of course you got more, but still it comes down to about a half dozen of really good ones.
Yeah. So let's talk about the sort of guys you've faced from lighter weight classes over the years who've impressed you the most. Because, you know, throwing out some names like Andreas Rundstrom, Engin, I know you've pulled with. Cobra, I'm sure you've had encounters with. Over the years, you've pulled a lot of these top lighter guys, probably the Patton boys, Dave and Ray, you know, and so on. We know Johnny, but that's coming a little bit closer to you. Who are the guys that have impressed you most from the lighter weight classes when you've pulled them?
Over the years of my arm wrestling, it would have to be Dave Patton. Because when Dave Patton was arm wrestling, granted, you didn't have the depth of arm wrestling, but Dave Patton, like everybody, was way ahead of himself. And what impressed me the most is when I moved to Georgia those first few years, Toyota had a series. They had like a tournament in Miami, one here, 1 or 2 in the Atlanta area. Dave Patton would show up and win all 4 classes. Everyone. Yeah. He beat Bobby Hopkins. He beat me. He beat everybody. The biggest compliment I got from Dave Patton over that series was I flew down to Miami, and he come up and he asked me what class, if I was pulling 1 or 2 classes. And I said, I think I'm pulling 1. He goes, all right, I'm not going to pull it. And all of a sudden I'm like, cool, Dave's not pulling my class. I'm going to pull 2 classes. I went over, I signed up for the second class, and all of a sudden they call Rombat Dave Patton. I look at him, I said, I thought you weren't pulling my class. He goes, I wasn't going to until you went to 2 classes. I don't think you can last. And that SOB beat me. Freaking guy. But if I would have pulled 1 class, he would have stayed out. He said, I have the respect for you in 1, but you weren't. Yeah. And he was correct. Mm-hmm. But Dave Patton, hands down, it was the biggest impression on me as a lightweight. Mm-hmm. You know, I pulled Brez just 3 weeks ago. He impressed me, of course. Engin I've horsed around with, always will impress me with his knowledge. Cobra, Cobra pulled, but if I get wrapped around Cobra's hand, he couldn't do nothing, because Cobra always wants to just top, and if you can clamp down on his hand big enough, my hand was big for Cobra, where he couldn't do anything really with it. And honestly, it was during practice and horsing around, and, you know, we're never 100%, so I never pulled Cobra when Cobra was 100% focused to try to do any damage. Then it might have been interesting, but a funny story about Boston is we're out at Bob out in Utah, and we pulled the tournament, and then there was an overall at the end. Mm-hmm. All right, so after the tournament, we all went to Bob's bar, and that's where we had the overall. The key to the overall was heaviest on down. The 2 super heavyweights pull way down. There's no rest. As fast as you can come up to the table, the guy has to pull. Well, I don't know who is above me, but I get to the table, I'm winning. And they were all taking their time coming to the table, so I had time to rest. Bogdan's right down in front of me, all right, looking like a little weasel. He's just all hungry, and he's drooling from the mouth. He's just waiting for me to have wars. He don't realize for him sitting there, he was motivating me more and more to beat these guys. Because I knew who he was. I knew the capabilities he had, and I knew if I got in trouble, he was going to come up there. So I was just trashing people as fast as I could because I didn't want him coming up there. And if you watch the video, when I pull Vogsden, his arm doesn't leave this position. Actually, his feet and everything come off the floor.
I think, didn't you do that with Andreas Rundstrom as well?
I was thinking of that match, but I couldn't think of the name. Andre, he got in a really bad, funky position, and I was putting so much pressure when he moved his feet, it ended up throwing him across the table.
Yeah, I remember that one at the I think it was like the 04's Lottie Tour, and he was posting back on you, and you drove on him, and he went for a ride, big time. That was funny as hell. So, right, mate, let's get down to the brass tacks now. We're 45 minutes into this show. Forget the ladies for the time being. Forget the lighter weight classes for the time being. We're bringing it close to home. So, The other day, mate, I'm watching some footage, and I've been thinking about this a lot just this last couple of weeks, okay? And particularly, I'm going to say after I spoke to Richard Lupkus, and I found out more about Richard, and you know, you get things that eat away at you, and they're just playing on your mind. And then and I'm also going to add to that, when I was a kid, and I was just getting into the sport, Lupkus was the first sort of, there were others as well, but Lupkus was the first sort of like superhero figure that I encountered in Sweden. World Championship Sweden, when he was just battered people. I mean, it was just decimation. And I remember at that time thinking, surely nobody can beat this guy. He's invincible. You know, I'm just a baby at that time, and I'm thinking, can't beat that guy. Nobody can beat that guy. So, time goes on, and I catch bits of footage of him. This is way before internet days and stuff like that. So you'd see bits of him, and we crossed paths a couple of times at tournaments, and then no more Richard. He's gone. He's out of the sport, and I'm getting into the sport, and so we missed each other. Then he comes back to the sport, and we're great friends. He pulls Arm Wars. I see him a tremendous amount of times. Spend time with him and Shirley, but he's such an understated guy. And then recently I see posts come up, right? And he's hammering John. This is a prime Richard. You know, Scott's put some up there. Scott's put some up in the last few days on Arm Sport videos. Check that out, guys, if you haven't seen it on Scott's Arm Sport videos channel. And he cracks John. And I mean cracks John. Yeah. He cracks Gary like a bum. I mean, who goes through Goodridge like that? You know, that explosivity and just raw top-end power. And I couldn't wait to get back on here after watching that the other day. Who, in your mind, is the best super heavyweight arm wrestler, the most dangerous super heavyweight arm wrestler at their peak of all time, or that you've ever faced? Because everybody says John. Was it John at his absolute best, or was Richard worse? I
think if you're talking short term, you could possibly go with several, you know, Richard and stuff. But over a duration of a long period of time, if John got up in that 230 range or whatever body weight, I would have to go with John. He might lose today, but he's going to come back in overall, in all time. Yeah, I'd have to go with John as far, if we're looking at a span of a career, of a long-term career, it would have.
We're not. We're looking at short, the very best.
Short at the very best, and nobody beat him. Yeah, I would have to go outside of knowing anybody else, you know, because I don't know too many of the guys right now. Yeah, Richard Lupke's was definitely the strongest. The thing with Richard, if you did not get back pressure on Richard at all, if you were just trying to match him sideways, I don't think anybody, even today, could match Richard sideways. Just like this. It would be nice to see him prime and Todd. I think Todd Hutchings wouldn't have nothing for him with the side pressure when Richard was in his prime.
We were speaking today about, you know, we were on the Fix show, and Dave Chaffee's name was thrown into that hat. Like a prime Dave Chaffee versus a prime Richard Lupkus. And my take on that was that Lupkus would have run through him because he was too fast.
Yeah. Dave Chaffee wouldn't have had nothing. Richard's hand is really big, and I don't think I would have to go with Richard. Richard in his prime, when he was in his prime for 3, 4, 5 years there, I mean, he dominated everybody. And it was just this.
Yeah.
Right there.
That's
and sit down, nobody was touching him on a sit-down table.
He said he'd never lost. Sit down. He said, I've never lost a sit-down match in my life.
It's a good thing he never pulled me.
Yeah. Hey.
No, I have no interest. Honestly, because sit-down, you don't have no ability to really back pressure. It is side pressure.
It is.
And Richard just dominated on a sit-down table. Yeah.
It's really got me thinking, fascinated me, because when Richard said to me the fact that he'd never trained technically with a club, with a team in his life.
Yeah.
Shocked the living daylights out of me.
If
I don't
Richard,
think I've ever come across anybody like that before.
if Richard actually worked with somebody on a team and learned angles of any kind, he would have been even better. That would have even been scarier. Because all Richard did was just, he just did his side pressure, a lot of side pressure. I beat him a couple of times, but to beat him, you better pull straight back as hard as you can and get him at least to feel pressure. And then again, they weren't in his prime. He had issues when I did get wins on him. In his prime, he would have, we horsed around one time and he just made it look too damn easy.
Single strongest puller you've ever faced in a tournament? Most surprising, holy moment that you've ever encountered?
Should have given you a 2-week notice on these. There's a lot of those too. Single strongest. For Reed was massive.
Not even just strength. Just that, take it away from you, just like, wow.
John.
John,
period. I mean, overall, people got to understand that I lived in the shadow. Even though I got some wins on John, I had to live in his shadow of all the time. So if there was a big tournament, I ended up I better either beat John to get first or I was coming home second or better. And John just knew so much. As far as power, although I guess if we're talking about power, John didn't determine everything on power. He would use different angles and pressures. He would locate your weakness and exploit it.
Yeah.
So I guess if we're talking power, I guess it wouldn't be John. For Reed was a beast in his day when he got strong there for that little while. He was just immense. God, there's so many different ones at different times, Neil. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'll answer that question next time we get together.
Yeah, next show. The next episode, that's coming up.
Yeah, because there's so many, and I know there's a few I can think of, but I can't righteously put it into place. Let me think of that one before we come back next time.
I remember you telling me that Devon, when we were at the Trafford Centre that year and you pulled him in the super match, I remember you telling me afterwards that he felt as strong or as difficult to handle as anybody he'd ever faced.
He was in his prime. Devon at that time, he easily could have been because, I felt bad that he crushed my ass 6-0, but then he beat John that year. He beat Travis that year. Devon was a monster that year. And
the other thing is, for people that want to know whether Ron Bath knows his onions, right? You were the first guy, you actually sort of planted the seed about the John match. Because when you pulled him that day and you jumped up, remember you jumped off the stage and you sat on the side of me. And then that night we were having a beer and you said, mate, right now, that guy that I faced today up there, I think he might be able to beat John. Yep. I remember you telling me that and I said, really? And you're like, I'd love to see that match right now. That's and it was next up. Yeah.
No, Devon hit his prime there for a while and, he still could. Devon's had a few injuries and aches and pains that held him up. But, Devon was a powerhouse. That surprised the hell out of me. I ain't gonna lie. I was so arrogant. See, for a while there, I didn't have anybody training with, and I didn't watch anything. And then after he smoked my ass, I found out they were setting up. They were watching videos of me, and they were setting up. So actually, I think Devon at that time, getting ready for that match, thought the sport was going to a new era where you actually study the person you're going to arm wrestle and learn everything about them. Because he said they set up every practice to make sure they looked at where I held my hand, how high, and all. So, Devon was a beast. But
the funny thing is, mate,
power he might have been, but there's a lot of powerhouses.
I tend to think though that a lot of the time when this kind of things happen to you, if you on the rare occasion that you've taken a loss, it seems to kickstart you when a different guy comes back. You seem to your ability to be resurgent, and we talked about this again today on the Fix. I actually think some of that is to do with, if you look at your career and particularly sort of middle to up to recent past in your career, you've had your own business when you had the Walls of Power. You've been working like a dog on that non-stop. Obviously your family life. You've never been arm wrestling hasn't been your be-all and end-all at any time.
No, arm wrestling's always been a hobby.
Yes.
It's never been anything more than a hobby. I'll get focused on a match for a little while, but in all fairness to myself, no. I train. When I first started arm wrestling and I was going to Burt's, I was going there like once a week, and we would actually train. But then I was in like a student stage. I didn't know back pressure. I didn't know hook or top roll. And so I was learning all those different angles. But sort of after we stopped going there about 4 years after that, because Bert had some different issues going on. And then it just became more a hobby. If there's a practice, we go. I had a club at my place for a while, but it wasn't like if I knew I was having a match, I was going to go study that person. I just wanted to see how they pulled, and we'll go and I'll do well. But I think a lot of that had to deal with the fact when I first started arm wrestling, it was, especially where I grew up, it was more a power sport. It was just hook and pull. And I think I still have a lot of that in me, that it's just naturally there. I'm naturally ready. Once in a while I get my ass kicked and I'm like, fuck, I gotta put some effort into this if I want to keep going. And, back in my 40s, when I was about 45, actually it was the same time I pulled Devin. Mm-hmm. I remember I was telling Devin when we were doing, we did some sightseeing there with you.
Yeah.
And I was telling Devin, because we had some good conversations about his, overseas days. And then I told him, I says, I don't feel I belong here because I'm 45, I'm done, I'm old. And for some reason, when I got to 50, because I always stayed in good shape. Yep. When I got to 50, it started getting enjoyable hearing people say, how do you stay in shape like that? How do you keep doing it? So it sort of motivated me into, when I grew up, when people got to 30, 35, it was like, hey, you're supposed to not do that stuff. Those are kid sports. Well, to me, if God gave you the ability to be able to do it when you're 56 years old, and all you got to do is watch what you eat and, you work out a little bit, you can still have, your beer and you can still go do crazy stuff once in a while, but you just monitor it. And if you're gifted with that, why not keep having fun and going after it?
Why the hell not?
So it's still a hobby for me. I don't intend to quit because even if somebody does get a win, I can still mess up somebody else's day really well and have fun with it.
Really bad.
And so I think at 50 I got a big motivation. And then, I went through some up and downs, and now due to some stuff being cleared up in my life, and a certain relationship with Miss Rose. You want to talk about motivation? Since I think I got 6 texts. She's at the gym working out. Watch out. So even though we're a long distance apart, we motivate each other on our workouts. Yeah.
Fair enough, right.
And that is important. If you got somebody backing you and telling you, and we don't push each other to become elite arm wrestlers, stay in shape, to stay physically fit.
And that's always impressed me with you, Ron. The fact that you've got the ability, and I've always shown that ability to be resurgent. As I say, you haven't taken many losses, and I've never seen you lose to a bad arm wrestler in my life. And it's one of those things like, hang it on the wall right next to your world's gold medal if you ever get a win on Ron Bath. And so many men would agree with that. They say, mate, you beat Ron Bath, you better remember the date and the time because that's an achievement, and it'll always be so. And I think that's one of the things you should be most proud of. In a situation where you've been competing against often, even recently, against younger men who are extremely focused, singularly focused, and that's never been you.
Yeah.
And yet.
No, I get a few. And that is a downfall, because usually when I go do a super match, I went to Wisconsin, I forget the guy's name, it's had a Russian, the bed don't know, but anyhow, he lives in Chicago, but he's from overseas.
Okay.
Strong lad. And, he came up there and, I never heard of him, but he was focused. They said he was focused for years. He beat me right on the first match. Then I went rest grip, and then I just trashed him a little bit. But, they said he was focused. But see, I was taking it light. I'm having a good time, and they're focused. They want nothing more than to beat me. And, so I just keep messing up people's day, and sooner or later they will. If it motivates them to do better, That's the big thing.
Well, yeah, you got the choice, haven't you? You know,
Yeah.
everybody reacts differently, and you've always been the guy that seems to bounce back from whether it be a loss, whether it be a serious injury, and you've had a few of them, mate. I mean, obviously you blew you in Japan. You had was that your first big one?
Yeah. The two. I only had basically 2 injuries. One was the bicep in Japan, and that was 99, and that ended up causing nerve damage, so I had to have a second surgery from that. And then 2.5 years ago, I blew my pec pulling Todd Hutchings.
And you've got any after effects from that, mate, or are you okay now?
No, I'm good. Actually, right before COVID, I was in pretty good shape. I was telling Josh Ellington, we were at a practice at Josh's, and I was hitting the gym, and I was doing one arm 250 pound pull downs with one arm. So I was at Ellington's, and he goes, well, then you should be able to do a pull up. Well, I went to grab it with my right. I grabbed it with the right, and I started going. You can feel like the scar tissue. So I got to about here, and it messed with my mind, so I let it go. But the left, and this here, we're talking, this was only in February. My left, I grabbed it right here, and I went like this, and went back down. So, but now that's the freaking Brez, it's been shot for 3 weeks. I'm doing a one-arm pull-up and pulling a pit bull at this end here, holding like that forever. Tears the shit out of it. But then I went to practice a week later, and Paul Passmore and Josh Ellington finished off what Brez didn't finish off. But it's coming back. I was working pronation last night, and it was sore for a little while, but then the pains went away, and I managed to kick out a bunch of 60-pound pronations last night. So, yeah. Now I'll be ready before I pull Mike Gould in November. Hear that, Mike? Still talking about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Just right. Just.
I'm done with Paul.
Mate, I'm looking forward to that one.
I'm looking for a PAL.
That's a nice match, yourself and Mike.
Somebody made a comment about trying to get me with Tim Bresnan for a PAL same time down in the States here, and I said, no, let me see what I can do with Mike Gould first.
Mate, you think you've had trouble with Skype. What about, come on, Bresnan. Come on, son. Tim Bresnan, on every week. Come on, Tim, when we're doing the Skype call. He's trying to get his Skype sorted out, not mastered that yet. Get online, Tim. Come on, mate.
Come on, Tim.
You can do it, Tim.
The pressure's on.
That's it. You know, it only took me and Ron about maybe 7 months to get this one in the can.
Win or lose, I wouldn't. If I can get it all together, and if I pulled Mike, I wouldn't mind pulling Tim. We were supposed to have a super match a while back, but then he got a deal to pull Pushkar. Yeah. And it was unbelievable. I don't blame him for doing it. And then we sort of got nasty because some of my teammates started getting nasty, and he thought it was me, and it wasn't. But, no, I have a respect for Tim. I think I can beat his style. But we'll see.
That's mate, a lot of people want to see that one.
But I gotta beat, Mike Gould first, or I'm not doing it.
Yeah, you're not looking past him.
No.
Eagerly anticipated, but not looking past you, Michael Gould. Ladies and gents, we're an hour in, and we're going to wrap up this particular episode. I want to say a massive, massive thank you to the man, Ron Bath, for coming on the show. Part 2, done and dusted, mate. Been an honour and a pleasure, as always, Ron. Thanks for... All right,
I'm going to go over that list, and I'm going to look through and see who I can come up with, who I think was the strongest at anyone in arm wrestling.
Remember, guys, if you've got any questions that you want us to put Ron's way, please send them over to Ron, send them over to me, put them in the comments, and we'll cover that off on our next go-round with Ron. He will be back on here soon. And remember, guys, if this is your first trip, your first visit here to Supernatural Strength, make sure you tell people about it, like, share, and please subscribe.